Hello, everyone. It is Irene here, Irene Lyon. Welcome to this live stream on the 2nd of February, 2022. There's lots of twos today, 222, 2022. And just as we get people on here, I will first off say, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Irene Lyon. I'm a nervous system expert and somatic practitioner. I've been doing this work for many years. Just a quick little bio. In my 20s and early 30s, but mostly all of my 20s, I studied exercise science, physiology, did a master's in research in biomedical science, health, nutrition, fitness, rehabilitation was kind of my thing in my 20s and early 30s, and then got into this world of the nervous system and neuroplasticity around 2001-ish, 2001 to 2004, got into working more deeply with the nervous system and the body-mind connection when I was recovering from some injuries back in my 20s. All of that information is on my website. You can always check out my About page for the full story. And one thing led to another, and I just kept learning about the nervous system. I started doing private practice and realizing that one of the biggest missing pieces within my world and what I had learned in over 12 years of university and also in some very sophisticated mind-body practices, namely the Feldenkrais method, was that we were missing this thing called trauma, and we were missing this thing called nervous system dysregulation. And that led me down the rabbit hole of working with and studying the work of Peter Levine, somatic experiencing. And then that led me into other avenues of teachers and mentors, namely Kathy Kane and Stephen Terrell, really learning what it means and takes to work with early trauma, developmental trauma, surgical traumas, in utero trauma, transgenerational trauma, anesthesia traumas, the whole 9 yards. And of course, the traumas that we tend to think of as more traumatic, like shock traumas, accidents, abuse, war, natural disasters, those sorts of things. So as we get going today, just a reminder that now, and of course this will live on YouTube forever, so if you're listening to this after the fact, thank you for pressing play after the fact. But right now it is, as I said, the 22nd of February, and we are open for enrollment for SmartBody, SmartMind. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what SmartBody, SmartMind is and who it's for and how it works. I won't get into every single nook and cranny because we have an information and of course registration site will pop up there in the chat or in the show more section below this if you're watching this afterwards. But essentially right now we're open for enrollment for SmartBody, SmartMind. This is a 12-week group online nervous system rewire program. It's a mouthful. And this is something that I have been developing and crafting and curating for well over 6 to 7 years now. This year in 2022 will be the 11th time we've run SmartBody, SmartMind. So we're not new at this online learning, healing thing. We have people from all around the world, I think up to 90 countries, thousands of people that have gone through this program. So it is a comprehensive program that will teach you how to become your own medicine. And I love that statement and sentiment because there is so much that we can do with our bodies when we understand how it works and we have the practices in our backpack, literally and figuratively, metaphorically, to just be who we're meant to be, heal the old stressors, chronic stressors and traumas that have been with us, back to that backpack on our back, in our backpack that we've been carrying for some of us before we were born. And the one thing that I will say right off the bat that is very different with SBSM, SmartBody, SmartMind, to compared to say other trauma-based practices and techniques is SBSM is not a technique. I'm going to be very clear. It is not a biohack. It is not a quick fix. It is an apprenticeship. It is learning deeply about your own physiological system, the neurobiology of your system, how trauma gets stuck in this system, why it gets stuck, the survival mechanisms that keep us stuck, how this bleeds out into chronic illness, mental illness, relational troubles, addiction, you name it. So much of our stored stress is now linked via some very, very strong research to these things that adults live with and deal with. And many of us just think that's the way it goes when we age, right? Oh, well, of course someone died of this or died of that. But that's sort of the visual that we see, the perspective that we see about growing older is we're just supposed to get these troubles. But what we're now seeing is these troubles are occurring as a result of nervous system dysregulation, which is essentially when trauma gets stuck in the body. So I will talk more about how the program works as I answer some of the questions that have been pre-submitted. I'm going to drink lots of liquid so my throat doesn't get dry. And I'm just going to see the chat box here and see who is hanging with me today. Hello from Holland. Hello, Becky, an SBSMer. So some people here might already be in the program. So welcome if you're brand new. Welcome if you're an alumni. We have many alumni that come back and retake when we go live. So I'll use these little prompts here to give you information about the course. So the course runs live for technically 12 weeks, 13 weeks if we add orientation week, which begins on the 7th of March, and closer to, what would it be, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 weeks, I still have to count on my hands, if we consider the 4 extra weeks we give all the members, alumni included, to ask questions within our forum. We run this once a year. We run it live. So think of it like going to a semester of university where you're doing biology for 3 months. Usually that's how long a semester is, or you're learning something for 3 months. Think of this as a trade. You're learning a trade. After we end in July 2022, you as a member, SmartBody, SmartMind member, have the entire program site at your disposal, all of the neurosensory exercises, which are the practical side of the work, all of the recordings of all of our Q&A calls, the training calls, all of the reading, all of the resources, all of the bonuses, all of the movement lessons. They stay living on the website. And so through the year, you, and I hope my alum do this, and I know many do, you keep working through the material. You keep practicing. You go back to the beginning. You finish things that you haven't started. You review, you study, you apprentice. This is really about apprenticing. Now, someone might be saying, well, Irene, why do we need to do such deep investigative work of our bodies? Some of us, we might not have to, because maybe we had a really good start growing up and we're regulated and we're healthy, and little bits of management, stress management are just all we need. But for some of us living with chronic illness, chronic anxieties, chronic mental disorders, autoimmune troubles, all these things that are connected with a dysregulated nervous system, and I'm making a huge assumption, but usually this is the case, for those individuals, the first 3, 4, 5, maybe even the entire childhood, our lives, wasn't safe. It wasn't solid. It didn't teach us nervous system regulation. It didn't teach us how to self-regulate our own neurobiology. So to relearn that, or maybe learn it for the very first time, which is usually the case for many of our students, we can't do this in just 1 week, or even 3 weeks, or even 12 weeks. A lot can happen in a week, a lot can happen in a day, but we need to continually build and apprentice. So that is one of the biggest differences, I would say, between other things that are out there that are based on just trying to get a trauma release out, or just trying to get an emotion out, or just trying to get something out. We're not trying to get anything out directly in this program. We're building the foundations the way that they should have been built when we were really young. So I'm going to stop with my preamble there. Hello from the UK, Holland. Hello from New Zealand. Hello, hello. So someone asked, why don't you do SBSM like the 21-day nervous system where you can sign up anytime you want? I don't have the funds, the money right now for SBSM. The reason why, Jerry's, is that it takes, sorry, my printer is deciding to talk to me right now. It takes quite a few people, quite a team to make the live program work. And for myself, for my company, just for our year, once a year is what we can do, and it's what we've chosen to do. We used to do it twice a year, but what we've found is that it's good for people to have time to integrate. There is, I hope you've seen a payment plan. So there is the price is $19.97, so $1,997 US for the one pay. And then 12, we can do a 12 pay, which you're paying over 12 months, it's $197. So if we look at what an individual receives and the length of time that they are using this material, I like to see it as if someone's seeing a private practitioner one-on-one, at least here where I live in Canada, to see someone who is very well trained, you're at least going to be paying $150, if not $250 an hour out of pocket to see someone. I was in private practice charging that level because that's just what we have to charge here to live here in Canada. And even though I was seeing some people once a week for years, true story, some of my clients had the ability to see me once a week. So do the math. I have seen more transformation from folks doing SmartBody, SmartMind. And it's not because the work I wasn't doing was good and to the point and getting results. It's that 1 hour with me a week isn't enough to create these new patterns. There really needs to be this ongoing self-study, prompts, homework, education, different insight, asking questions, the ability to ask questions. We have a team, and this will be a good time for me to talk about the support that you guys get. So when you're in the program, again, there's a program site. We have got about 10, I always lose track. Diana, remind me, how many are there? We have about 10 professionals trained in many different somatic modalities, namely somatic practice, somatic experiencing. Some are trained in counseling, psychotherapy, yoga practices, somatic practices, Feldenkrais. Someone is in the forum 7 days a week. Monday through Friday, someone is in there 3 times a day. On the weekends, usually twice. So there is a constant ability to ask questions and get answers from us, which just can't happen when you're working privately with someone one-on-one. As a therapist, you need to have boundaries and obviously not be answering your clients' questions 24/7, but we've made it such that there is that support. So the other thing, if one cannot do the 12 pay and you have done the 21-day nervous system tune-up, continue doing the 21-day nervous system tune-up and save money over the next year. I saw a comment on someone's on a social media post yesterday. I don't remember where it was anymore, but a woman, I'm pretty sure from the UK, she said she's been saving, she had saved for a year, £20 a week so that she could purchase full price SmartBody, SmartMind last year. And she said it was the best thing she ever did. And because she has consistently saved over the course of the year, it made her way more motivated to do the work. And so there are ways. We've had some people in the past who have done crowdsourcing campaigns, asking family and friends for small donations, and they've made up their tuition that way. So we trust that people will find ways to join and be a part of the community when they can. CEUs, they're not available, Todd, because this is not a professional training. Now, some professional trainings will accept self-study, and if that's the case, we will give people a certificate to show the amount of hours they've studied, and of course, it's an honor system. we will provide that. We can provide you with a certificate that says that this person has gone through SmartBody, SmartMind. These are the amount of hours of not in person because it's online, but study work. But yeah, this is not a professional training. Therefore, we don't have official CEUs. We're not connected to a psychological organization or anything like that. All right. Becky said, it took me 6 years to finally join. I did 5 years of that with free material that Irene offers. Yeah, again, if you're brand new here, there is so much information on my website, audio downloads, video trainings. Make use of them. They really, really do work as that base foundational level. I'm finishing another course. How much time do I need to put in? So you really got to go at your own pace. So if you go to the site, Donna, there is an FAQ section. And I can't remember the number, but the question is, how much time do I need? And we've kind of done a rough estimate of how much time someone needs. But here's the thing, if you just do an hour a week, that's better than nothing. The training calls are every Tuesday, and they're about 90 minutes. They're, of course, recorded. There's no need to sit and listen the whole 90 minutes. You can do 15 minutes, that kind of thing. The actual lessons, there's 4 lessons a week, and those lessons range from 20 minutes to 10 minutes to 50 minutes. It's varied because it depends where we are in the program. So again, just remember that this is the one time a year that we open enrollment, and all of the curriculum is yours to continue to work through for the course of the year. So definitely just think about that. And if you know that you would like the curriculum and you're finishing another course, then finish the course, but dabble in it. And then once that course is finished, just go full steam ahead with SBSM. All right. Someone asked, how do I follow the program if I feel like I need more time? You just give yourself more time. So this is probably one of the trickiest things for us humans to grok, especially those of us whom grew up in a traditional educational world where we have to get our homework done. The test is on this day. If I don't get it in, I'm going to fail. This is completely different. So even though I use the example of a semester at university, this isn't like university. Some folks will take a year or 2 to get through the first half of the curriculum. I'm being really honest. Some people might only get to lab 3. So we have 10 modules. We call them labs. And some folks will take a year or 2 to just work through the first 4 or so labs. This is not a reflection on them being slow or not getting it. It's a reflection of them taking time and titrating. We're all different. Humans are completely unique in their physiology's capacity, pending their history, pending what they've done throughout their lives. And so for some people, they might need more time. And we stress upon this over and over again in our live calls, in the training calls, in the text-based support that my team offers. We're always saying you must go at your own pace. Just like you can't force a child to learn something faster, right? Some might try, but it's not going to end up being a situation where that child is loving what they're learning, and they probably won't learn it very well if they are under duress and stress. So yeah, take your time. There's no rush. The material will be there for you in 3 weeks' time, 4 weeks' time, 3 years' time. Okay, thanks, Diana, for popping up. And yeah, thanks to Diana, who's popping up magically all these little links that are coming up. All right. Okay. Yeah, and one of our SBSMers who's here today, Becky, says, I haven't done all the labs yet. The results are there. This year I will get through more labs. Exactly. All right, I'm going to get to some of the questions that were sent in via email. So thanks to all those, and I'll keep my eye on the chat. So Kim asks, Doesn't my nervous system need to feel safe in order to be able to heal? Without a basic sense of safety in the world, is it possible to heal and integrate past trauma? 100%. And the reason why is because A, I've seen it, and B, it's about building what we would call capacity. Somatic, nervous system, neurobiological capacity. As we build the capacity to sense what's inside and connect with the outside world, that is what slowly helps us see and feel at the unconscious level and at the conscious level, there's safety here. But this is a great question, Kim, because a lot of people will say, I'm going to wait until I feel more safe to do this. And there's some exceptions here. So let's just say you are literally living in a real war zone. And by real, I mean you can't walk out into the fields because there might be old landmines still there, right? There's no food in your community. There's no running water. If you needed to get basic medicine, you couldn't get it. So there's a situation, I think, where if the unsafety in the external is so severe, then I would say this isn't the time to do SmartBody, SmartMind. However, if you are here and you have electricity and there's food in the fridge and there's running water, and I'm making a generalization, but this is how I see it. You're here, you can concentrate on the chat, you can hear me talk, you can see me smile, you can feel where your system is in space, and you can leave the house and grab a loaf of bread and milk, those kind of common things that we talk about, or whatever you need, you know, within reason, of course, then I say, yes, you can do this work, right? So there's obviously going to be distinctions. So the key is knowing that safety is restored by slowly building capacity in the nervous system. I can't say it any more clearly than that. And what will happen when we start to work with the nervous system physiology is we will start to build up this knowledge of what is actually safe and what is actually not safe. So when we think about it this way, if we were brought up in an environment that was very, very unsafe, as in being in a war zone or in an abusive household, our color and vision of the world is going to be very skewed to everything is dangerous no matter what. No matter what. Now, if I think about my first example, if really there are landmines and IEDs and all these things that are waiting to blow us up, then that's different. But if we can walk out the door and get our basic needs met, then the question is, where is that unsafety coming from? Is it actually accurate, or is it internal within the physiology from past experience? The other thing that's important to understand is that when we have not healed our early traumas that have put us into a state of perpetual unsafety inside, where our, what we would call neuroception, our sense of safety, our perception of safety of the world, if it's off, things will feel more unsafe when they actually aren't. This is something called coupling dynamics. It's a fancier word from the world of somatic experiencing, where basically all we see is bad because all we grew up with was bad. And so part of this nervous system regulation work is starting to understand if that is actually accurate. Doesn't mean that there aren't dangerous things out there, right? That classic example, which I hate, but I'll say it, is, you know, you can get hit by a bus today, but the question is, will you? If you actually look both ways and are aware of the environment and you hear and you see, you're probably not going to get hit by a bus or get into an accident, because there's that situational awareness that is bred and is there from having a more regulated nervous system. So great question, Kim. So yes, it's possible, and it depends on actual situational circumstance. Next question from Laura, we have a little water here. We have 11 moderators who help support the program, 2 of which are in their own kind of worlds doing specific work. So my husband, Seth, also a colleague, he moderates the live curated questions. So throughout the course of the labs, the program, every week we have a curated Q&A call. And this is where he will answer questions that have been submitted by the membership. We choose the ones that will allow the most diverse education. And then if there's follow-up questions, he's there to answer questions on the forum. And then another element to SBSM is our movement lessons, bonus movement lessons that are taught by my colleague, Ilya Marak. For those of you that have been around for a while, you may remember I used to do in-person workshops with him back in 2016 through to 2019. And then of course, everything shifted a couple of years ago and we had to pause, but he is still within the curriculum offering movement lessons and answering questions around these movement lessons. All right. So Laura asks, I do not have a strong sense of self. I experience myself as fractured. My feelings and thoughts often lack coherence, while rage states feel overwhelming. I have very little memory of the past and can experience strong triggers without context. I've always got a scream in my mind and a felt sense of being attacked and struggling for survival. But that is all. It's a difficult way to live. For much of my life, I have felt purposeless and unmotivated. And when I do take action, I tend to do so obsessively. Can your method help me? So Laura, this is what you write here, and I'm going to speak more general, is a very strong, there's a hint here, or a very big hint, of early trauma, developmental trauma. Chances are, from what you wrote, things were not safe when you were growing up, or your parents or your primary caregivers were not safe. And so they imparted into you this sense that the world is a dangerous place, that there is attack coming from everywhere, and your system is overwhelmed. In other words, it is in a state of dysregulation. So if we think of those elements, the answer is yes, this work, I don't like to call what I do a method, because it's not so much a method, but it's a way of learning and bringing information into the system so that we can bring more capacity and healing to the system. But if we call it that, yes, what I do and teach in SmartBody, SmartMind can help. And then, of course, it's up to you to be in the driver's seat and to do the work, to go through the process in the way that you have to ask questions. This is going to happen, but we've had people that have purchased the course and they don't do anything. And I know that that is common in many forms of online learning, because it's very easy to push that buy button and grab the goods, but then not engage. And there is a thing that we talk about in the somatic experiencing world, which is called fleeing from health. So when we feel that there's something that will actually help us, we run the other way, even if we've invested, our hard-earned money into it. And so this is where it's really, really important to try to be slow and kind and empathetic with yourself, and give yourself the benefit of the doubt, and say, I'm just going to do one little piece today, and I'll see how I am tomorrow. But what sometimes occurs, and I'm kind of going into a broader context here, is we see the entire curriculum. We have to get through 12 weeks, and then our system freezes. It shuts down, or it goes into more anxiety and overwhelm. When you said here that when you do take action, you take action obsessively, this is indicative of stored survival stress and early trauma. Some of us only know how to be in 5th gear, if I use the example of a stick shift, going really fast, or in park mode with the engine off. And so part of having regulation in the system is being able to modulate our excitement, but also when we're feeling kind of dull and under, bring ourselves up a bit. And it's not about overriding and pushing ourselves, but for some of us, we might have to push ourselves a little bit to get through some things. We might have to grit a little bit and be like, okay, I'm just going to do 5 minutes. And then for some of us, we might have to be like, okay, I just did 10 things this week and I did way too much and I'm now burnt out and crashed. Next week, I'm going to see if I can do 5 things, for example. Okay, that is my answer to that question, Laura. So yes, this can help, and it all comes down, not all, I'll rephrase that. It comes down to you really honoring and listening and respecting your system, engaging with the support, engaging with the curriculum, and working through it in your own pace. All right, I'm going to do one more question, then I'm going to come into the chat here. Okay, Steph writes, I've been struggling many years with eating disorders, and the reason for controlling food shifted from wanting to lose weight to fear that food will make me sick. I'm also very aware that I tend to get very angry easily, especially when someone close judges me and I cannot control my anger and disappointment. They only see the bad side of me. I know from some of your videos that anger is a feeling that has to be released, but sometimes this happens with my 9-year-old son. Do you think SBSM can help me with the fear of food? So there's I think this is the same. Yeah. So there's a few questions in here, Steph. I'm going to go back. I'm going to talk about the anger for a second, because our anger and our healthy aggression is essential medicine for our body. And for many of us, it never was properly harvested, expressed aloud, or we didn't see it displayed properly in our home environment. What I've known from working with folks with eating disorders and other forms of addiction and OCD, for example, and I'm again being very general here, but typically there is a history of that person when they were little feeling like they had no control. And so the thing that helped them control life and themselves was controlling their food or controlling a very specific habit. And so if, let's just say hypothetically, one didn't learn healthy expression of anger, which I'm going to be honest, not very many of us have in Western society, we might either shut that down or we might explode it out, right? Anger is very important, but when it becomes violent and harmful, it's not good. As you said, sometimes it's released on your son, and of course we don't want that. So that's primary. And then the piece around the food and fearing that food will make you sick. And I don't know more of your history, but what I will say is that I used a word a little while ago, coupling dynamics. When something that we are supposed to have for nourishment and sustenance, we are afraid of, there's something going on in the physiology that's saying all things are bad. And I'm being, again, very general. We see this in folks who have high levels of sensitivity. And some sensitivity is very important, right? You don't want to walk into a room that's filled with poisonous, noxious substances. You want to be sensitive to that and get out. But sometimes sensitivities can come in and these aversions because it's a way for us to control and to, in some ways, also react and have a survival response to something that doesn't demand a survival response. Am I making sense there? Because we want our survival responses. If there is an actual threat, like the example of that noxious substance, or something bad is happening and we need to get out of the way, we want our fight flight to come on. We want a healthy survival stress reaction. But when it happens with the things that are supposed to be good for us or nurture us, or emotions like anger that are important, then we know there's something a little disjointed. The wires in the physiology have been crossed. it's not very technical, but they've been crossed. They're not lining up properly, right? So they might be wired, but they're not wired in a way that makes sense for the health of the system. And so with all that, again, at the core, and it looks like you're a 21-day member, which is great. The difference between SmartBody, SmartMind, so listen up for those of you that are 21-day members and you're not so sure, you want to go further with this. SmartBody, SmartMind really focuses on working with the viscera, the stress organs, so the kidneys, the adrenals. These are those little areas lower or mid back that secrete our adrenaline and cortisol and noradrenaline, so the stress hormones of stress. We work with those levels directly with intention. This is how I would work with someone if I was to see them one-on-one and they had what you were representing with. I would do touch work and bring focus to these stress organs. The other ones would be the gut, the brain stem, parts of the levels of the body called the diaphragms. The joints of our body hold stress, emotion, fear. So I would work one-on-one with someone to give them the, what's the word I'm looking for? To give them the idea to say, I know you don't think you're safe, and that's okay. This goes back to the question that Kim had, but we're just going to hang here and it's okay. We're just going to hang here and we're just going to feel. So in a private one-on-one session, I would probably maybe have my hands on an individual, or I have their hands touch their bodies or something like that. In the program, we are working with a lot of self-touch and a lot of intention and a lot of visualization to talk to not just the organs, but the pathways that tell the organs to freak out. And so we're in some ways reverse engineering the stress response by going to the area that is impacted by the stress response, i.e. the gut, the heart, the digestion, the brain stem, these diaphragms of the body, our movement patterns. So we're really, again, SmartBody, SmartMind is not like rewiring our thoughts or working at the level just of the limbic system or the amygdala. We rarely even ever talk about those systems. We're really getting into this core physiology, because when we were little, if someone had early trauma, whether it was due to actual physical abuse, sexual abuse, or maybe there was a surgical intervention that happened when we were really little because they had to fix something, which is so common, or maybe mom died when we were young or lost another child, and we felt that fear from her, or that loss, or that sense of abandonment. You as a little infant isn't cognitively or even emotionally going to be able to register what is occurring. All you sense is something wrong is happening on the outside of me and I'm feeling it in my physiology. You know, where I live here, I'm really close to the ocean, and there's all these massive ships in the bay just waiting to get cargo and leave. And sometimes at night when they're on, there's this hum. It's this deep, deep hum. And I'm sensitive. I'm very alert to my surroundings, and I'll hear it and I'll feel it. And I'm used to it now, so I fall asleep, but I can feel the vibration in my heart. But it's not trying to impact me, but it is. So if we think about a situation where, let's say, a parent was really stressed, and maybe they are caring for you well, but their hands are stressed. Maybe they're injured and they don't know how to hold you, or maybe they weren't held properly when they were little, so they don't know how to do that. We feel this is what early and developmental trauma can be, right? So that overarching sense of unsafety gets into our cells, literally. And then if we think about a childhood where it's like that for years or decades, that's a lot of threat coming at the system all the time, right? There's a reason why when they interrogate people, they'll use insanely loud, screaming, heavy metal music. It's a constant threat, and it breaks people, right? A bit of an extreme example, but that is how they do it. Okay, great question. I'm going to get into the comments here. Lisa says, I'm afraid to do SmartBody, SmartMind. I signed up 2 years ago and wasn't able to do it, and my life has deteriorated since then. I know this is the answer, but I'm afraid I can't tolerate it. So what I'll say, Lisa, is can you find a way to push play on some of the lessons and just have them be in the background? Whether it's the orienting lesson or maybe one of the diaphragm lessons or the kidney adrenal lessons, I would recommend going to those. I know if you haven't done any of it, this might not make any sense, but how can you find a way to just do a little bit, and you've invested, you've paid for it. There's so much in there that you can make use of. Ask a question within the forum, ask for help there. Have you tried Elia's movement lessons? They're very gentle, they're very slow. So I would really encourage you, I want to encourage you to go back and see if you can start again. You know it's the answer. So I guess the question will be, how can you, excuse me, talk to your cells, right, intentionally, and say to your cells, you deserve this, right? You deserve this. We need to work on restoring health. And it can be really hard psychologically to break through the patterns, the wirings that say that we don't deserve this and we've gone too far down the other hole, or down, sorry, not the hole. We've gone too far down on the path of deterioration. But I know from being in this line of work for as long as I have, we can turn around from very big things, and when our system is almost ready to go. But it takes the system, your mind has to be strong enough to push through this in a way that's good, pushing through. The other thing that I've had some students do, I've heard this through the grapevine, some people have hired coaches. Doesn't mean you have to work with someone every week, but hiring someone, it could be a life coach, someone to motivate you, someone to check in on you. Again, there are ways that we can do that, and I won't go into all of them, but I do know that that is something that I've heard some of our students have done because they want to honor their investment and do the work. It's like, in school, some people will have a tutor. You'll go to university, but you'll still have a math tutor to help you with the homework. I had that, I remember. So there's all sorts of ways. So I will encourage you to really try to get back into the curriculum. Someone just wrote here, I was living out of my vehicle when I started, and healing was more important than a home. Yeah, I'm assuming out of the blue you mean you had done SBSM. I definitely remember some of our students, I at least remember one, and maybe this was you, who was homeless when they started this training. So again, to go back to my example of if you don't have a home over your head and food in the fridge and running water, maybe you shouldn't, this might not be the best time. Case in point, here's someone who didn't have that and they still found a way to do it. So the human system is very, very creative, I find, and resilient when there is a deeper part of them, even when they're really unwell and sick. And as this last person said, deteriorated, it is incredible how much our spirit can lift when we make the decision to do it. It doesn't mean it's going to be always a walk in the park or a piece of cake, but it can be done. Stefan asks, how would I know what is the right amount of titration? I'm going to start that again. How would I know what the right amount of titration is through the course when my nervous system is so out of whack? Great question. The answer, practice. You just have to practice. You trial and error it. It's the same way if I'm working with a person individually or someone's training at the gym. They might think they can do 20 reps of 50 pounds and they get through it, but then the next day they can't walk for like a week, right? Doesn't mean that they've injured themselves necessarily, but they pushed the body a little too far. So then the next time they go back, they do 30 pounds, and maybe they do 15 reps. So it's kind of similar, Stefan. And you ask questions of our staff. But it's trial and error. And if one feels that they don't want to push their system, you just do much, much less. And then you see how the system takes it. And then if the next day your system, your symptoms have actually shifted in a good way or in a way that seems like this is positive, then you might do the exact same thing the next day and you don't add any more. And then once you do that a few times, you're like, okay, I've got the capacity to be with this. I'm going to add a little extra now and a little extra. So trial and error, ask questions, and practice. Okay. I'm going to get back to a question here from Frederico. So you write, I have low back pain since a surgery in 2011. The doctors fused my lumbar 5 and sacral 1 joint and 2 more surgeries in 2017 and 19 in Germany. I had to sell my apartment to pay the surgeries. I'm a professional musician and cannot work because of the pain and the fear of the pain and the fear of the movement. I'm doing Qigong with a master that goes into my body, and I'm living in a freeze response. So my question is, can you help me? So Frederico, again, I know based on orthopedic injuries, I've had many myself, not spinal, but knee, that have been quite dramatic, that when the system has had a lot of surgeries, and of course, I don't know the etiology of why that occurred, but there can be a lot of old trauma, even from the surgeries and the injuries in the tissues. And Qigong is beautiful. And actually, Ilya Marak, who offers the bonus movement lessons, is trained at a very high level in Qigong and Tai Chi and dance and movement. Those lessons will be beautiful to teach you how to soften the system. And then on top of that, the labs, the course curriculum is so gentle and so slow and so focused on bringing more awareness and flow and coherence to the body, that while there are some lessons that focus on the spine, every lesson, every practice is global. And so because of my background in the Feldenkrais method, which is the form of mind-body work that I was studying back in 2004 through 7, and of course beyond, the lessons of the Feldenkrais nature in SBSM are also married with the work of somatic experiencing and the early trauma work that I do. And there's just such a beautiful combination for restoring flow, resiliency, safety, but also slowly opening up the joints in a way that isn't forceful. I'm also for exercise. My first studies was exercise physiology and strength training. So I also know that it's important to stimulate our body at more forceful ways, but in a situation where you are living in this fear of the pain and the fear of the movement. Again, I've mentioned this a couple times on this call, that idea of coupling dynamics. There is a coupling dynamic where my senses, and just tuning into this, your recovery is being hindered by the trauma of the pain and maybe what was occurring before. And maybe if there was some surgical stuff that wasn't the best. And like you said, you lost your apartment because of the finances needed to pay for the surgeries. Which I can understand can be very, very devastating. So there's also that, right? There is this lack of safety overall. And then if I go back to what I was mentioning in the previous answer to Steph's question, the work with the kidney, adrenals, the brainstem, the gut will be, I believe, monumental for your system. And also, if we think about where this gut is, behind that is the spine, right? So when our first brain, which is our gut, is tense and afraid, it is going to relay messages to the fascia, to the muscles, to the bone, to the ligaments, to the tendons of those spinal structures to stay tight. And so that's one of the reasons why I didn't stop working with movement, but as a practice, I stopped because I realized that I was trying to work with people's structures when they still had insane, immense survival responses in not just the tissues, but in the autonomic nervous system that was signaling to the tissues to stay frozen. Okay. Amy asks, will this program possibly help to recover memories and traumas I have had? I'm not going to go into the whole history here, Amy. Or will I be able to benefit from the program if I have no memories to go by or think back? I'm sure I had a trauma. I just don't know what it was and when. I really want to heal in every way. I've had a hard time doing the 21-day program, so I'm hoping I can benefit from it as well as a 12-week program. So the reason I didn't go through the history is not because your history is important, but as a general whole, if we were really young and there was stuff going on that wasn't safe, and by young, I mean kind of under the age of 3, but it can even be under the age of 5, we're not going to, and I talked about this in the 21 days, the memories that we form, we don't form what's called declarative memories cognitively, where we're like, this is what happened on that day. It was a sunny day there. Grandma was here. Grandpa was there. My mother was here, et cetera, et cetera. What we feel is entirely somatic. It's in the body. It's in the cells. And so again, the 21 days, it's 21 days. So we can only get so far. In the curriculum for SmartBody, SmartMind, we are working at that unconscious survival stress organ level. This goes back to that example where I'm laying in my bed at night and I can feel the vibration of the ship, the engines. So again, when we're little, if there was bad stuff going on around us and we couldn't make sense of it, our system is basically struck with survival stress and it doesn't make any sense. But what starts to happen is if there are memories there that have been suppressed, they can start to come up. But we don't want to pry those memories out prematurely. And this is the difference between this line of work and other lines that try to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Take a straight line into the memory banks to try to pry out what occurred. And what can often happen when we don't do the groundwork to track and this is really important, guys, the physiology, the organs, the tissues, the pattern in which our fascia is storing fear or stress, that holds the memory, that holds the sensation, and then sensations breed emotions. What can happen is that, let's just say someone is like, well, I'm having trouble sexually. There's this thought, well, it must be because I was abused sexually. That's not necessarily the case. And what can happen is we can start to fabricate false memories. And then we're literally diverting ourselves far away from what we need to focus on. But when we focus purely at the beginning with, of course, learning the theory, like you guys are learning now, working with the physiology in a very titrated and foundational way, and we trust it and we honor it and we follow the impulse and we take our time and we titrate and we take breaks and we connect with the environment. Very few practices teach people how to connect with the environment and their bodies at the same time with the theory that you're going to learn. When all of those things come together, Amy, what happens is the system organically goes, oh, it's time to bring that memory up. And it might not be a declarative memory because you were 4 months old. It might be an intense feeling of terror because that's what you felt when mom passed away. This is not your story. I'm just making this up. But then you feel the terror And you can be with it without being afraid of the terror, because part of this work is working with the old survival stress in the organs and the tissues that you didn't have the capacity to be with because you were too young. And so you go, oh, wow, I'm just kind of miming here. I feel like I'm going to die, but I'm not. I'm here, I'm breathing, I'm in my home. There's this big tsunami wave of stress coming, and I'm just going to feel it. I'm going to use my resources. I'm going to do the practices that I've learned, and I'm going to sense what was not able to be sensed back in the day when that thing happened. So this is kind of the masterpiece, if you will, of this work. Again, as I said at the beginning, this is very different than a method or a technique. But if you go and if you read the stories on our site, the participant stories, listen to some of the videos of our students, they're not lying. You know, they really are saying that this has changed their lives. And they don't say that lightly, and they say it over and over again. And it's not because this was a miracle cure. Gosh, wouldn't that be easy if this was a miracle cure? But it's not. It requires relearning and maybe learning for the first time how to be in the physiology, something that we really should have been given, but our system, our cultures, the way that we raise human babies, it's just not there yet. We're getting there slowly. All right, I'm going to go back to the chat here. Oops. I just scrolled too quickly. Ah, there we go. Oh, thanks, Becky. You wrote, Irene knows what she's talking about. It's so different that it feels like it can't be true when she says it. She knows that too. If we speak up, she knows how to help. Yeah, and it is. It's taken me years to be really solid in my convictions, but the more I see and the more I hear stories, and so many alumni who have been around are back, and they come back and they report back, and I check in with them and I'm like, how are you doing? And they're like, yes, I'm still getting better. I'm still improving. This is lifelong, and it's cool because folks really do stick with it. And of course, you have to begin and start. What if you can't visualize and only see black? Any thoughts? So then you try not, then you ask questions of my staff, but we don't need to try to visualize an image. We can actually put our hands and look at the body. Or if we think about the kidneys, adrenals, rather than visualizing, you get a picture online and you see it, and then you not necessarily imagine it, but you just say, that's in my body, right? So there's very creative ways to work through these sort of conundrums where when we try to visualize, all we see is black. It's kind of like meditation. I think a lot of folks who meditate, from what I've seen, aren't actually doing what truly is meditation. They're just concentrating really hard. And that's actually not providing any advancement in their consciousness. It's just a stress response that seems like it's meditation, but it's actually high level concentration that's not doing anything. So this is where I wouldn't force a person to try to visualize. I'd be like, well, can you draw? Can you write? Is there a sound that comes out when you think of stress? So there's ways to be creative with this. And that's, again, where asking questions, using my staff, getting your questions answered, getting creative are really, really important. Let me just have a bit more to drink here, you guys. Hey there, Nina. Yeah, so you've spoken to me about tinnitus, or some people call it tinnitus. Tinnitus. Do you think the course can help me with the anxiety and depression I have as a result of getting tinnitus from the vaccine, stress, and change? I believe it can. If we just think of anxiety and depression alone, this program has been designed to build capacity so that we can be with the stress and survival responses. If I can recall, you had shared that there was trauma before all of this happened. And so what I'm seeing is those, and this isn't just about your question, but those that have, and I talk about this in the healing trauma videos, you guys, if you haven't watched at least the first healing trauma video, that is your homework today. We'll post that below. It's on my website. It's the healing trauma video trainings. If you've watched it, let me know. But in that video, I talk about a car accident as an example, person A and person B. Exact same small fender bender car accident. Person A walks away fine. Person B has the accident and they're a wreck forever. Not forever, but they're a wreck. The reason why person B is a wreck is it's usually because what was occurring already before that insult, before that trauma, before that virus, whatever you might want to call it, before that poison, before that thing, their system was already at capacity. Here, let's do a little. So I've got this glass of water here. I have tea. Hopefully I won't spill. Oops. If I kept filling that up to the point where it is overflowing, that's not good. It's going to create a mess. Already did a little bit. But if someone's pool, if someone's system is already full, and then we add an insult that the system, it's not necessarily that the system doesn't want it. Of course, we don't want to add stress to our bodies that's harmful. But when there's already a full system, it can't cope and handle with an outside stimulus or stress in the same way. This is similar with people who have what we would call ADD, ADHD. They go into a room and everything is so loud and they can't concentrate. But then there's all these other people in the room that can. It's like, well, what's the difference? Is it the din? Is it the activity? No, it's the person's system. And so if the system was already filled up to the brim with old stressors and traumas, and the system didn't know how to metabolize emotions, the physiology, you add something to it and it just says, it's like this, that example, the straw that broke the camel's back. So it comes down to, Nina, being able to build up the resiliency, the capacity, and not so much trying to focus on, I have to get rid of this tinnitus, although I know it can be very, very debilitating. But it's about how can I build up everything around that symptom so that I have more capacity and I feel more safe. And sometimes what occurs, especially with nervous system disorders like tinnitus, but also just know that people with hearing who have been subjected to intense sound pollution can also get tinnitus. But when it's nervous system disorder related, and I know that it is from working with folks and seeing it in my trainings, we want to focus on the whole system first. And then often what occurs is things start to heal around that system. So I hope that answers that question for you and anyone else that might have that question. Let's have some of my water that now has tea in it. Okay, I'm going to get back to some of the questions that were submitted via email. Celestine asks, the 21-day tune-up was very good and I learned a lot. Awesome. My self-sabotage behavior of soothing myself with sweets, so I'm assuming sugar, has not changed at all since using the tools of the course. How would SBSM assist me in processing my experiences where I could recognize my unconscious behaviors and make shifts to soothe myself in healthier ways? I've tried so many ways to break this pattern with poor success. So I think, Celestine, it'll be important to also, and I've said this before, and I can't give dietary advice per se, but one thing I'm going to just make sure, and maybe you've already done this, is to make sure that your system has all the right minerals, nutrients, that you have enough carbohydrate, glycogen. Glycogen is stored in the liver and the muscles. We need that for brain fuel. Many people are starving of glycogen because of dietary practices. I've actually seen this in folks who, and I'm not against this, but that go hardcore keto, for example. They're just not getting enough sugar in their systems. I'm not saying that we should just be eating sugar by the teaspoonfuls, but complex carbohydrates, starch. Some of us need more. Everyone's a little different, especially women. So I just want to make sure that your diet is solid. And this is coming from my old nutrition background, because sometimes when the system is craving something really sweet, it might be that it's lacking in blood glucose and glycogen, especially if you're active. In regards to your question about SBSM, if you've been listening, one of the true differences between the 21 days and SBSM is we're getting into those stress responses at the organ level, at the gut level, at the visceral level. We're also working, and I haven't mentioned this yet, there's a lot of content and material in SBSM around working with healthy aggression and anger, working with shame and disgust. We get into the deeper levels of just these wired patterns that get into us, often through misattunement, poor attachment, secure attachment, and then, of course, all the traumas and abuses that occur to us that make us have to find ways to control our system. So the other thing, too, is, actually, I'm not going to go into that because I think I've covered everything there. So like I said, number one, I just want to make sure that you do know that your nutrient profile and your micronutrient profile and also your minerals are in good check, because I know mineral deficiency can also influence these cravings. So something to just maybe really look into, just in case. And as you said, you learned a lot from the 21-day tune-up. So my sense is that you will learn, obviously, even more with SBSM because the curriculum is that much more robust. Okay. Nicole's question. Can doing the nervous system work in SBSM help a person find clarity on big life decisions and which paths in life to take? If so, how might it help? I felt stuck and unsure in several life decisions for several years: where to live, relationship, possibility of motherhood, career. I am struggling to figure out what I want and scared to take action on it. My overarching answer to that is yes, Nicole. And as I just mentioned to Celestine, the piece around, it looks like you've purchased the 21 days from what my people are telling me here. The elements that we get into in SBSM regarding healthy aggression and anger are super important for setting us up to be able to push forward in life. And interestingly, a little fact, the word aggression is rooted from the Latin word aggredi. I've talked about this before, and aggredi means to move forward. It isn't about violence necessarily or big screaming matches. It's to move forward, to push forward, to be certain in one's direction. And our life force energy is needed in order to make these big decisions. The other thing that came into my mind as I was saying this, so I'll just say it because sometimes I pick up these things, is it's very important if you have family system, people in the life that you're around, friends, partners, if in any way people in our lives are keeping us from being our true authentic self, or we're having to kind of slightly be a chameleon and change when we're with people, this is very common for folks in just general life, in socialized human Western culture. We will change ourselves based on who we're with. For those of you that know me personally, this is how I am when I'm with people, whether it's my husband, friends, all that kind of stuff. My family's pretty small, but I'm pretty much who I am all the time. Because when we aren't, the system isn't sure who is what or what's who, or who are you today? What do I have to do today? And many people who grew up, let's say, even in families where there was divorce, They have to be a certain way at mom's house, and they have to be a certain way at dad's house. And then when they go to grandma's house, this is how she likes it, and this is how they like it. And when we have that growing up, we don't actually figure out who we really are. Does that make sense? And so part of this process, nervous system process, is obviously building up capacity, working with all the more common ailments that we will see when there's dysregulation, chronic illness, depression, anxiety, autoimmunity, all those things. And then there's this other piece around life path. There have been so many members in SBSM who choose completely different life paths. They will find love. They will get divorced. They will make, it's very interesting to see what occurs when some of this more healthy aggression element comes in and they start being who they truly are. So I hope that answers that question. I'm going to get back into the chat. Would this be helpful in healing from a traumatic brain injury? Sustained a brain injury over 5 months ago from a car accident and now suffer constantly from the symptoms of post-concussion syndrome. Penny, yes. Again, I'll be very clear. You have to go at your own pace. You have to monitor your symptoms, but I've worked, myself included. I am someone who has had way too many concussions that I want to admit, and whiplashes. And part of why so many folks struggle with concussion healing is the stress and the survival response is often never addressed. It just never is. And it's not the fault necessarily of the medical system. They just don't know. It's just like if someone gets into a car accident and they have to lose a leg, for example, and they never get the proper psychological trauma healing to deal with phantom limb pain, for example, that person can go down a very, very, very dark path with pain, depression, not figuring out how their life is going to be different, all these sorts of things. So having worked with many people who have had concussion, when we start to work directly with the survival stress, the system starts to heal. Because the other thing too is when we're stuck in survival stress and there is this fight flight that's maybe waiting for that car accident to happen again, or we're on edge, the brain tissue is on edge, that causes inflammation. When we have inflammation, our system can't heal. So I think a lot of the reasons why people struggle with concussion injury is the system is still in a state of shock and fight, flight, and freeze. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question. So Kay asks, I'm deciding, let me just have a little more to drink here, you guys. I'm gonna keep going. I still have energy. It's early in the morning here. So Kay asks, I'm deciding to do SmartBody, SmartMind or Scott Lyon's certification course on somatic stress release. Many similarities. Do you have any knowledge of somatic stress release program to speak of the differences? I know Scott. I don't know what he's teaching. I have done some videos on my thoughts on why just shaking and somatic release isn't enough. And the main difference is, Kay, is that not everybody needs to shake or release trauma in the way that some of these programs might teach it. The system will release the stress in the way that it's supposed to when the capacity and more safety is on board. For someone who has suffered, let's say, a car accident or a concussion, as this one person just asked, there might be a procedural memory that releases, that needs to release because it is wanting to complete something called a procedural memory. So that's one thing, is that you want to make sure that what you're learning. So first of all, I'm going to start over. Are you learning this for yourself or to work with other people? And the reason I say that is, depending on your history or depending on what you're wanting to do, that should guide you as to what you choose. My caution is that sometimes a course, a certification is so focused on one methodology that they leave out the foundational elements that I believe must be put into play. But my students will back me up here when I say, when we have the foundations and the theory, and we're working with all elements of the mind-body environment connection and the viscera, the system will release in the way that it's supposed to release. The system will move the trauma out in the way it's supposed to move out. And this is my only caution about programs that are about just stress release or trauma release. Trey, for example, David Berselli's work. Again, I have experienced a bit of that, and I have people in my courses who have tried to go those routes. But when their trauma is more based on just general unsafety, misattunement, lack of secure attachment, there might be more of a need to build capacity and maybe harvest the healthy aggression. Sometimes just getting those two on board allows a person to follow the path that they need to follow to release what they have to release. And there might not be anything to release. There might be something really intense that just has to be felt. So again, I don't know the curriculum. I think it really comes down to, is this to work with other people? Is it for your own personal world? SmartBody, SmartMind is not designed to work with other people. In my opinion, to work with other people at this trauma level takes years and years and years and years of training. It's not something that you can just do in a month or a couple of months and be, in my opinion, be trained. And this is a bit of a trouble that I'm seeing, because everyone realizes now that trauma is a big thing. We have to work with it. And because of that, things are popping up that are trying to train people, in my opinion, too quickly. But it depends what you already have on top. Are you already a psychotherapist? Are you already a yoga practitioner with a trauma-informed background? Are you already someone who works with the physical body? Then a certification course where you're learning a specific line can be wonderful, but it really depends on the scope that you're looking for. Yes, I hope that answers that question. The question, the time commitment to do this work, this is so individual. If you go to our FAQ page, Ruben, there is a question that answers that. And I get it. We have full-time jobs. We have side hustles, a busy schedule. It really comes down to, can you apply a little bit every week, every day? So I like to say, if you're being pulled into wanting to get this material and learn it, know that you can learn it through the whole year. And so some of the lessons are 10 minutes long, some of them are 30 minutes long. The training calls where I'm lecturing are usually about 90 minutes or so, but you can also do those in little chunks, right? I love watching and listening to podcasts that are 3-4 hours long. I certainly don't sit and do that in one 4-hour sitting. I'll do 30 minutes here. I'll do 20 minutes here when I'm making my tea in the morning. I'll walk for 20 minutes and I'll listen. So there are ways to get creative even when we have a really busy life. So I think the key more so is, are you being pulled in to do the work? And if so, then be creative in how you work with that. Okay, I'm going to get back into the questions that were submitted. So Maria asks, I absolutely do not feel safe in Canada right now, as the government just declared war on its citizens. So yeah, there's been an emergency act that's been put in place, but I really need to do something about the heavy duty reactions of my body. I would agree that you should, Maria. And the reason why is because we really want in this current time it's not even about managing our stress, it's about knowing how to process the stress and the uncertainty. That is the key. Because managing and coping is just going to keep, if I go back to my glass of water example, it's just going to keep building it up, right? So your question is, would it be efficient to start any treatment or one-on-one or your 21-day program or SBSM in these times of total unsafety? So I'm going to challenge you just a tiny bit, Maria. And if you've been if you were at the very beginning of this call, you have heard me say, this is where learning how to orient to what is a little more safe is important. So again, I can't assume, but if you are in a home, if you have a roof over your head, the things that we need for basic daily life and sustenance, heat, running water, all those sorts of things, electricity, internet connection to connect with friends, family, to learn, to watch funny shows. If our faculties are online and we have some of these basic necessities of life, one of the things that I encourage people to do is to orient to what they have that is a resource, that is good, that is safe. And then, yes, it's not about being ignorant to what's going on maybe around us or down the street, but being able to really land and resource is super important. And one of the things that we teach and work with in SBSM are, what are your resources? What are some positive things that can help you stay more contained? And then the lessons within really work at that level of the stress physiology, learning how to bring the system back to the present moment, connect to what's around you. Because yeah, I'm also in Canada, and so I'm very aware of what's going on. And as I mentioned a second ago, we really have to pull in our resources and look at what was already in my system before this happened. Is there something that has made it so that this feels even more intense? And it's intense, but even more intense. And from what I've seen over the past couple of years, Maria and everyone else, those whom have had practices at this nervous system level and who have learned regulation over the years, they did okay the last little while. Doesn't mean that there isn't stress and there isn't some worry and uncertainty, but the more we can have resilience. And again, I go back to that video from video number 1 of the Healing Trauma series, where I talk about the swimming pools and the beach balls. Again, you guys, if you do anything, watch that today. We don't want to keep filling up the balls or filling up our pool with balls. We want to grow that capacity, grow that swimming pool, not let any new things sit. And the ones that are in there, how can we dislodge them and start to move them out? So I hope that answers that question. Okay. Here's an interesting one. So Sunflower asks, you are a great healer, Irene. What do I do if you trigger me and I couldn't listen to your audio voice to calm myself because I felt upset and shamed by you? So I think this is a great question. I wanted to address it because I know that when you're in the program, it will be my voice for the most part, but there's also transcripts. Every single audio, every single video training, even the live calls that we do, we send them for transcription, and then we put them on a PDF and you can read. So if for some reason my voice isn't the best for you, you can do that. Now, if you're here and you're listening to me, then that's great because you're taking in my social engagement. But it's also important to understand that part of this work is feeling our triggers. Part of this work is feeling the old shame pieces, the old toxic shame pieces that might be there. And, my job is in no means to shame anyone. That doesn't happen within the course. I am direct. I'm very direct, as you guys can see. I'm to the point. I'm direct. I challenge folk. But when we start to understand our triggers, our survival responses, and how to be with them viscerally and physically, we start to release, move them out, heal them, integrate them. That's the word I want. The other thing about the concept of shame is there is something called a healthy shame and something called a toxic shame. If you haven't watched any of my content on those two, please do, because they're very important distinctions to understand. And for those of us that were shamed toxically, my directness can sometimes be off-putting. And it's not because I'm trying to be, it's just because that certainty, that sureness might not have been something that we were around when we were growing up. And so it can feel sometimes a little threatening. But then the question is, okay, how am I feeling that threat in the system? What's going on? Okay. Someone asked, do I have time to do the 21 days first? So you could definitely start. You could begin today with the 21-day nervous system tune-up, and you would still have, 3 or so weeks to move through the material. So that could be done 100%, and then you can join SBSM. The one thing to know, all of those who are 21-day nervous system members, you will have gotten our emails, but the cost of the 21 days is discounted from the full tuition of SBSM. So to me, the courses are of the same. The reason why we offer the 21 days all year round is so that if you find me in August or December, you can begin right away. And if you want, you can begin now, or you can wait until we begin on technically Lab 1. The first module is on the 13th of March. Okay. Beautiful. Thanks, Becky. Becky writes, and Becky, you've been very vocal in our chat. Awesome. Thank you for providing information. Is a member already. And she wrote, it's taken me 6 years. I love this. It's taken me 6 years to not be triggered by Irene. It's amazing to hear her talking today and see how different it looks with a more balanced nervous system. Isn't that interesting? And you see, here's the thing. I even am thinking about one of the training calls that we have in the course called, it's on healthy aggression and anger. There's 2 parts to our training calls. But one of the questions I pose the students in the training call is, why do you think working with anger is so difficult or so confusing? And the reason why is because, at least in North American Western society, Commonwealth societies, for example, it just was never displayed properly. Healthy aggression, exuberance, being sure of ourselves. For many of us, we grew up being ridiculed, being shamed, being told to not be vocal, that classic children should be seen and not heard, that stiff British upper lip, hold it all in. If you cry, you're sent to your room. Someone the other day wrote me a message saying that anytime they cry, they're screamed at and told to stop. That's not good. But this is so common, right? The amount of abuse that is seen as just normal is so common. And so when we see someone who is very skilled, let's just say, as I am, and very secure in their authenticity and is confident, it can be triggering. And so it's important, I think, to maybe recognize that. But then what happens is, as you, the student, as you, the human, becomes more solid and more contained and more aggressive in healthy ways with your system, more boundaried as well, you start to become more resilient. There then is more self-worth, more self-esteem. Someone with high levels of self-worth will always set a boundary if someone is in some ways violating them, right? But so many of us, we won't set boundaries because we weren't taught that. And so, yeah, I think that's a great comment. Thanks, Becky, for mentioning that. All right. I'm going to get to a few more questions here. Yeah, Sunflower says, see you in 6 years. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. And true story, I just spoke with my husband online. So if you check out a video that we did in January, Diana can pop it up here. I've been with my husband for now 11 years, I believe. And it was only about 3 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago, that he finally felt safe in our house. And that's not because I'm abusing him or being mean. It's because his history of early trauma is such that the only time he would feel safe is when he was alone in his house growing up. The moment he heard the garage door open, the moment he heard dad or mom come in, and he was in a divorced family, his stress response would mount because he then knew he would have to change himself to be with his parents or his sister or his siblings. That's a lot of strain and stress for someone to hold. And so when we got together, when we fell in love, we have a great relationship, we like each other, we love each other. Even with all that, his unconscious nervous system physiology was still saying, danger, danger, I can't sleep if somebody's upstairs. And what had happened was he came home, he was tired, he laid down, and I was rummaging around doing work. And normally he would never have been able to have fallen asleep because his nervous system would be a little bit on edge. And he knew that he had finally healed that unsafety in his cells when he fell asleep with me doing my stuff up here. So very important to understand that safety is something that grows slowly. It's not something that can be fixed in a weekend retreat or in one, in my opinion, plant medicine ceremony. There needs to be a tilling, a cultivating, a growing, a foundation. It's like growing a garden. You can't do it in one weekend. It takes time. So just wanted to mention that. Thanks, Diana, for popping that up. Okay, I'm going to get to this one last question from Ruben. Do you think that doing nervous system work can help with managing more responsibilities? I feel like there's a blockage that is preventing me from moving forward. Yeah, I think it comes down to a few things. One, when we have more connection to the present moment and we're more oriented to what's going on around us, we can start to see what needs to be done. True story. I didn't even work with this person. This was just someone who told me that they started to learn how to orient through my videos. And as they started to learn how to orient, they cleaned up their room the first time ever without being told by their parents. Now, if I can recall, this girl was younger. She was probably 17 or something. This was years ago. And by just learning the physiological basis of orienting and doing it in her room, in her bedroom, in her home, she mounted up the energy, that healthy aggression, and she just cleaned the shit out of her house, out of her room. She was like, oh my God, I got to clean this mess up. And she had been living in that room, you know, that was her room for probably her whole life. But something shifted when she saw it from a more nervous system point of view. And no one had to tell her, it just occurred. So she became more responsible, right? She literally cleaned up her room. And so the other flip to this, Ruben, is that sometimes we take on too much stuff. We overdo it because we want to people please and we want to be seen as good and be praised for that. And so the question is that desire to take on more responsibility because you actually know you have to because you've been slacking? Or is it a response to this feeling like I have to do more, I have to be more, I have to help more people? And that can be not good, right? That can be not good. All right. We have been going for an hour and 40 minutes-ish. I am going to end for today. Thank you to Diana for posting in the links here. Thank you, my dear. Thank you for everyone for the questions. Thanks for my alumni who are here and just supporting the work. And one of the final things I'll say is more housekeeping. Today, as I do this, it's the 22nd of February. Registration for SmartBody, SmartMind is open now. It will remain open until the 6th of March. We only do this once a year. I promise we are not going to open up membership again until next year in 2023. So if you're here and you're feeling drawn, check out our site, go to smartbodysmartmind.com, read through it, look at the curriculum, look at the FAQs, read some of the success stories, press play on some of our alumni's videos. They're really powerful. They're honest, they're true, they're authentic. And then if you register by Thursday, so you still have a few days, we will gift you 3 of my drop-in classes. So once a month, we've been doing these since 2019. We do a monthly drop-in class where it's an hour of practice with me. We hang out, we practice a theme. There's actually one happening this Saturday. I'm going to be doing a theme called nervous system informed breathing. So that's this Saturday. But if you join by Thursday, the 24th Pacific time, end of day, we'll gift you, along with your SBSM tuition, 3 of the drop-in classes for March, April, and May. And then, of course, those classes are recorded. If you can't make them live, you still get them. If you have any technical questions, you can always send us a note at support@irenelyon.com. That'll get you to my team. We also have a Facebook group right now where people are asking questions. So it's Healthy Nervous System Revolution Facebook group. There's a thread in there where you can ask a question, a general question, or a question about SmartBody, SmartMind. And I'm going to be doing a few more of these calls, one again next Tuesday, which will have a focus for somatic practitioners, healers, coaches, mind-body professionals, how this can blend in with your work. And then I'll be doing a few more Q&As that week. Again, open now until the 6th. Have a think, make an informed decision. This is how I teach when I'm on the training calls. I don't change myself, but we go much deeper. I don't hold anything back. Anything that I've learned in my trainings over all of the years, I share with you. I'm an open book. So be well, everyone. Thank you for hanging out, and we will see you when we see you. Bye for now.